we can get everybody to take their seat, we will begin our program for today. I see we got someone coming in, so I'm going to try to give her a few seconds to walk in and make it down here. But if she walks too slow, then we're already on the go. So how's everybody doing today? All right. I want to thank everybody who made it out here, fought the weather. It seems like each time that we did an event this month for Black History Month, we tended to have bad weather. Last week it was snow and ice and everything coming down. This week, you know, rain and tornadoes. And but I'm glad that you guys made it, and I'm glad that we're here. I'm your host today, John Jamerson. I've been with Lyles Station since the beginning, during the time that I remember my wife coming to me and saying, hey, you know, we need to do something to preserve our land and our, you know, down there in Lyles Station. And it was at a time like that we suggested that she went to Landmarks in Indianapolis. That's when we lived in Indianapolis. And behold, she went there, and the same day that she went there, they told her, said, hey, there was another lady that was just here, just left out of here, named Jeannie Killebrew, who also had came talking about she wanted to preserve the land down here in Lyles Station. And so it was from that time, it's what, almost 22, 23 years ago that this took place. And so we came down here, met at the church over there with some of the people that are here right now, and we was telling them what we wanted to do. We formed the Residents Council, and from there we put together what is known as Lyles Station Historic Preservation Corporation. Jeannie Killebrew was the president at the time. My wife Denise was vice president. I believe Joyce Granger was secretary at the time, and Stanley Madison was the treasurer at the time. And so that is how all this began. And so we looked at this building that my father-in-law, Norman Greer, had at the time, and was like, okay, what is going to be our first project? And everybody said, let's restore the school. And so that's how we got to where we are. We restored the school 20 years ago. I think we completed the restoration, or it was started complete. I don't get a nod or maybe. Okay. Yeah. But it was around that time, about 20 years ago. We either started it or we completed it. I can't remember. When you get my age, you tend to forget a few things. Yeah. So blame it on the mind and not on the heart. So with that, I once again just want to welcome everybody. We have our program today called Black History Then, Now, and Tomorrow. And so it was through the efforts of what the forefathers of this land did back then that caused people to take place 20 years ago to say, hey, we want to restore, and so that something could be here tomorrow, which is today. And so we're in that same point asking, hey, we want to connect what took place back then with what's going on right now so that we can have something for the future to go on. I would like everybody, if you would, stand up and sing. Lift every voice and sing. We're going to sing just the first verse of it. Now, I will read it in case somebody has bad eyes like me and can't sing. So, I'll read it first so you at least know what it is. It's down here on the bottom. It says, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it down. Yeah, see, that's why I need help. All right, we just going to sing it. So she said that you guys know, so we just going to sing it. All right, everybody join in with me. Y'all know how it goes? All right. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as introduce to you guys and to present to others one of Lyles Station's own. Just live not too far from here. I can almost see the spot where she grew up at, Miss Karen Ragland. And she is the first African-American woman board member of the EBSC. She's the president of that board. And so she is still Lyles Station history, making history today. And so this is part of what we want our people and want our youth to understand, that although we look at history as a thing of the past, we also need to see it as something that is present, because we make history even today, regardless of what our choices are. So let me present to some and introduce to others, Miss Karen Ragland.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the honor and privilege to be here today. As John said, I grew up here at Lyles Station, one house over to the right. And, you know, this is a proud heritage for me. And I was looking at the stage here, and probably where that middle chair is, I remember doing my, as my grandma says, your recitation, my Christmas speech, Easter, but especially Christmas, because, oh my gosh, the Santa Claus would come in, and he had a cane, and he's beating the cane against the wall, bam, 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 and I mean, I was scared to death. I was like, don't touch me, whatever, just kidding, I was scared, you know, a little bitty kid, and, but you know, it's those memories and those times that, you know, are just, you know, so precious to you. And it's just a blessing to see the restoration, and just, you know, thank you for your efforts. You know, thanks to the board and committee for just, you know, passion and completing, you know, the desire to uplift history. I was born in 1956, and I didn't go to kindergarten. I began first grade in 1961. I was 5 years old, and looking back at being a former teacher, that was too young to begin school. And I would have gone to Lyles Station School. I would have gone to school here, but it had closed in 1958. And so the way that I got to school was Ken Madison had a red and white station wagon. Somebody's nodding their head, they remember. You might have been in the car at that time. But he crammed all of us kids in there, his kids and me, and would drive us to Baldwin Heights School to attend school. And I'm pretty sure that he might have dropped some off at the high school too, you know, but he was our bus, you know, back then. Lyles Station Road was part gravel then. I don't know. Does anybody remember if it was the whole road here gravel or just part of it? The whole road was, I just kind of remember that as a kid. And then when they blacktopped it, you know, that was like big news, you know. Man, blacktopped Lyles Station Road. And so, but the bus, the yellow bus, only came so far here in, I don't know if it was a county thing or what, but Ken Madison would pick us up and drive us to Baldwin Heights, and he would, at that time the buses were all lined up, and 1 through whatever number, and he'd pull up, you know, just big and just as proud as, you know, those big yellow buses there. And, you know, and I remember, you know, we're the only, you know, we're the black children in this red and white car. And, you know, instead of like feeling different and, well, you know, this might be embarrassing or, you know, it gave me a sense of pride because, you know, I mean, he was bold enough and this was our way, our means to get there. And you know, we just rolled right on up and parked just like, you know, we were the big, you know, yellow school bus. And, you know, and I think a seed was planted there that, you know, that was just the way, you know, God wired me, instead of like, you know, taking situations that would be, you know, maybe controversial, you know, it was a time to challenge. Now in 1961 also, it was the height of the segregation, civil rights, riots, marches, sit-ins, and so when we pulled up and we're parked and we're waiting, you know, for the bell to ring to, you know, get out and go into the school, I got the, you know, I think the theme song that's rolling in my head was the OJ song, Ain't No Stopping Us Now. And then I like, you know, Black Power. And then, you know, again, as I said, my social conscience, you know, was seated then. And then later on, at some point, the bus started coming to, I guess, Lyles Station, but it still didn't come all the way to your house. You know, there still was a gathering point that we had to get. I want to say it was on the other side of the tracks. That's about as far as they went. And, you know, so then we began to just drive and, you know, wait there for the bus, and then we load on and, you know, then go to, you know, Baldwin Heights from there. And then as I got older, then it began to pull, you know, like I said, I lived 2 houses over, so we'd have to walk, you know, walk down the lane, meet the bus, and then the bus would take the route all through Lyles Station, the bottoms, and, you know, pick up, you know, all the black children. Now at that time, Baldwin Heights was K through 8. I did my 8th grade year at that time. It was the first year of the Princeton Community, I guess, middle school. And but first grade through 7th, I went to Baldwin Heights. And, you know, kind of as a kid, you know, I would consider it a good school, but it was strict teachers, you know, by the book. I recall one of the teachers in homeroom. Well, let me back up. At that time, kindergarten through 4th grade was on one side of the street, and then, I guess, was that Brumfield? What's the name of the street that runs, would have been? Garfield, okay. And then on the opposite side was 5th grade through 8th. And I remember strict teachers, and then some, you know, subtle racism. But in the 1st grade, my 1st grade teacher's name was Mrs. Pride. And she fit her name. She walked with her head in the air. She had on stiletto heels. I don't know how she wore them every day, but she did. And so one day, you know, 1st grade, you learn printing, and you have to write through the alphabets and so on. So mine, beginning with the K, you know, I'm practicing my K. Well, that day, I decided to be creative, and I put a curly Q on my K. So for that creativity, I had to stay in recess, and I had to write my name 100 times, over and over. And then after I would finish a page, I would have to walk up to Mrs. Price's desk. And for a 1st grader, that's a long walk. You know, they have the saying in you know, when they're walking a prisoner, you know, dead man walking. My thing was like dead kid walking because that was a long walk to, you know, get her okay, you know, that my K's were okay, and printed to her satisfaction. And if it wasn't, she would open her drawer, get her ruler out, have me outstretch my palm, and would swat my palm if my K was crooked, if it, you know, looked like it was not in between the lines, if any teachers in here know that paper. And oh my God, you talk about traumatized. And so, you know, I'm trying to hold back crying. My eyes are filling with tears. And that was bad because I couldn't see the paper. You know, my eyes are like all cloudy and, you know, about to start. And then when the tears would run down, then they'd run down on that brown line paper and I'd get holes in it. Then I said, I'm really gonna die here. I'm not gonna make it out of the first grade. You know, but it was, needless to say, it was not a good start for a 5-year-old. In 4th grade, my 4th grade teacher was Mrs. Kim. And I'm sharing these experiences, the Black History then, now, and tomorrow, because it shaped the things historically that happened, the things in my life, the accomplished, was a shaping of, Black history in my life and then to watch it around me. But her name was Mrs. Kim, and she also taught piano. She was my piano teacher as well. And she not only, I would say, she not only taught educationally, but she taught me integration. She decided to start hosting tea parties for the 4th grade girls in our class. And she would do that on Saturdays in her home. And we were taught etiquette and manners and, that one day we're going to be refined young women. And I was the only, Black girl in the group. And, but yet, because of her just caring and this mild-mannered personality and care that she went beyond, I became lifelong friends and friends with doctors, lawyers, and common laborers' other daughters. In 5th grade, I had the teacher, Mr. Cole, and I just remember him. He was a farmer. I remember that standing out in my mind, because how teachers would tell you about their life. And then his brother, he was at one time the principal as well. In 6th grade, I had Mr. Schlechter. And he was a proud Kentuckian, and I knew that because Kentucky was all he talked about all the time. And then he used the word Ewans. I had never heard that before. Has anybody heard that? Have you heard of Ewans? I mean, he would refer to us as a group and say, now Ewans, turn in your paper, or Ewans, your homework. And I was just like, I was stuck there. I couldn't get past like, okay, no, I never heard that before, humans, but he used it, very regular. And, but yet that was my transformation year, because that year, Percy Deuce Jr. and I were the first Black students voted king and queen of homeroom. And I remember after the votes were tallied, it was really funny. Mr. Schlechter, he was looking, he recounted, he looked again. Then I could see him concede, and he stated, class, very good choice. So I'm thinking maybe because we were both Black, and had that not been too good if one of us wasn't. I wasn't sure, where his compliment, was kind of coming from. So to become the king and queen of the whole school, because every class was represented from like 1st grade, maybe even kindergarten to 8th grade. It was a fundraiser, it was raising the most money. Well, my grandma Lois, she gave me jars and jars of money all the time to take to school, so I just knew, we were a shoe-in, we were gonna win, And to this day, I don't know how we did it, But my experience from that was, it was another long walk down the aisle. I recall we all were lining up, all the couples, by our homeroom and grade level. And when it was time for us to walk in, it was a crowd-filled standing room, auditorium with people, and the stairs, and the all eyes on us moment that I will not forget. And here again, it was those moments like that that prepared me to be, I consider, a trailblazer, a pioneer, instead of, fight, not flight, and yet feel that, if it was intense hatred, if it was shock, if it was disgust, that toughened me, my character, to be a defender of justice. Then I went to, it might have been 6th grade, and I had Mrs. Gilbert. She was my English teacher. And I learned prepositional phrases, linking verbs, adjectives, nouns, modifiers. You could dissect the sentence when she was finished with you. And at that time, you know, I was skinny. I was probably big as a bone. And she rode me like a pony. And I said the only thing missing was a saddle. You know? And she would pull me in class, pull me out of class, keep me after class, another lunch moment, and she would scold me. I mean, and she had a long nail on her index finger. So I mean, being skinny, and you know, big as a bone. She would take her index finger when she was talking to me and tapping and making her point on my bony collarbone. So it was painful, it was irritating, and needless to say, I didn't hear a word she was saying because all I could feel was that nail penetrating, you know, my skinny collarbone. And I wanted to think if she did hate me, she must have saw potential in me and was not going to let me fail. So, you know, needless to say, nevertheless, you know, I did pass her class, and, you know, later on I became a Title I reading and math teacher. Through all that. More character building. And I wanted to share the current events that were going on I mean, by the time I started first grade at 5 years old. By the time I was, I guess, 10, 12, these were just some of the things, you know, that were going on at that time. In 1954, civil rights movement was getting momentum, was moving. In 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. And I have been very blessed, you know, to be able to hear different speakers and so on, you know, speak of, you know, just experiences that were related to civil rights leaders. And her granddaughter spoke several years ago at USI, University of Southern Indiana. And she said, you know, the story is told that Rosa Parks, the reason why she didn't move, you know, she refused to get up out of her seat was because her feet hurt. And she said the reason why she did not get up was because she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, she had got on the bus, she had every privilege, every right to, you know, sit, go on it, but all the seats were taken, and the only thing open was in, you know, the white section. And so I'm gonna sit there today. Today is gonna be the day. And she did, and you know, and history was made, you know, from there. Also, it spurned the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1960 was the Woolworth lunch counter. And that was, again, you know, I had the privilege of my granddaughter. She runs track for the Evansville Speedster, and their 4x100 team qualified for nationals. Well, the Nationals were hosted in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that was home of the Woolworth store. And so while we were there, because I love history buff, I said, we're going to, you know, we're going to have a moment of, you know, Black history. And so I took them over to the Woolworth, and then it's originally set up exactly that time period. And the tour guide was sharing with us that this was a 5-month-long, maybe plus, event. And because they were trained like soldiers that, you know, if they sit there and if, you know, they encountered whatever, be food poured on them or the harassing, but they literally were trained and had others that would yell at them and torment them and so on, so that they were prepared and ready to sit there and take whatever it was, and you know, and then just new recruits would come on. If they decided to arrest somebody, then another would come in and replace, and this went on. And you know, and one thing I love about learning is that it involved young people. You know, I always say, you know, you want something to move, you want to move it, you know, get your young people involved. And the high school at that time, the HBCU at that time was very instrumental in the boycott and just said, it's unjust for, not everyone to be able to be served there at the counter. In 1961, the Freedom Riders, it was made, it was bombed, and 1963, the March on Washington in August of that year. In 1963, also the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing where the 4 little girls were killed. 1963, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And I can say when that happened, everybody says, that time period, you either remember where you were or what you were doing. And I remember being so brokenhearted because, it was like John F. Kennedy was the people's president, and he came from a different perspective. And if you ever read any history on them, their mother was a very humanitarian, and she raised them, to care about your fellow man. And so that's why they were very instrumental in the civil rights movement as well. And I remember just crying as a kid when that happened, will we have any hope, now? Because I knew all the turmoil going around with the riots, with the other assassinations, of other leaders, and just, the turmoil, of the country. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act, and 68 was finally put into law. And I met a professor of history was sharing how that even though the Civil Rights Act was passed, how that to get to a 9, like I think at that time was 9, a unanimous vote, in other words, was, years. And I don't think we really realized that, that it took years for it to, even though it was an act, it took years for it to become just legal like law. In 1965, the Selma to Montgomery Bloody Sunday. In 1968, the sanitation workers' strike. In 1968, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and that was just another horrible moment as, I'm 12 years old, and it was just achingly painful. And then behind that, the assassination of, that was April with Dr. King, and then June was Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's brother. 1968 was Apollo Lunar. It was, back then it was the race between Russia and the United States. Who was going to get to the moon, who was going to get to space first. And in 69, the Module Eagle. And those two events, as we know, if you're familiar with the movie Hidden Figures, and how the Black women mathematicians and so forth was just the catalyst behind the untold story, to help get us into space and make history down there. Moving to the now. I wanted to read this story. I was looking online, and it's really interesting. This group of young people, well, it started out 2 women, 2 young women. They were going to go 72 hours without anything that was, I'm blanking on my word, an invention of an African American. They were doing a test to see how many things that we encounter every day can we live and do without or not. And they and anyway, needless to say, they failed. It was really, it was interesting, even from the cell phone to the microphone I'm speaking in, just outside of just maybe some of the other traditional things, that were inventions. It was amazing, and they didn't make it. They didn't make it, I don't know, the first hour. Even the laptop, there was, this instrumental inventions. But this story it says, what if there were no Black people in the world? This is a story of a little boy named Theo who woke up one morning and asked God, what if there were no Black people in the world? Well, God thought for a moment and then said, son, follow me around today and let's just see what it would be like if there were no black people in the world. Get dressed and we will get started. Theo ran to his room to put on his clothes and shoes, but there were no shoes and his clothes were all wrinkled. He looked for the iron, but when he reached for the ironing board, it was no longer there. You see, Sarah Boone, a black woman, invented the ironing board, and J.E. Manslinger, a black man, invented the shoe lasting machine. Oh, well, God said, go and do your hair. Theo ran to his room to comb his hair, but the comb was not there. You see, Walter Salmons, a black man, invented the comb. Theo decided to brush his hair, but the brush was gone. You see, Lydia O. Newman, a black female, invented the brush. Well, he was a sight. No shoes, wrinkled clothes, hair a mess without the hair care inventions of Madam C. Walker. Well, you get the picture. God told Theo, let's do the chores around the house and then take a trip to the grocery store. Theo's job was to sweep the floor. He swept and he swept and he swept. When he reached for the dustpan, it was not there. You see, Lloyd R. Ray, a black man, invented the dustpan. So he swept his pile of dirt over in the corner and left it there. He then decided to mop the floor, but the mop was gone. You see, Thomas W. Stewart, a black man, invented the mop. Theo thought to himself, I'm not having any luck. Well, son, God said, we should wash the clothes and prepare a list for the grocery store. When he was finished, Theo went to place his clothes in the dryer. But it was not there. You see, George T. Salmon, a black man, invented the clothes dryer. Theo got a pencil and some paper to prepare a list for the market, but he noticed that the pencil lead was broken as well. He was out of luck because John Love, a black man, invented the pencil sharpener. He reached for a pen, but it was not there because William Purvis, a black man, invented the fountain pen. As a matter of fact, Lee Burridge invented the typewriting machine and W.A. Leavitt the printing press. So they decided to head out to the market. Well, when Theo opened the door, he noticed the grass was as high as he was tall. You see, the lawnmower was invented by John Burr, a black man. They made their way over to the car and found that it was just wouldn't go. You see, Robert Spice, a black man, invented the automatic gear shift, and Joseph Gamble invented the supercharged system for internal combustion engines. They noticed that the few cars were running into each other and having wrecks because there were no traffic signals. You see, Garrett Morgan, a black man, invented the traffic light. Well, it's getting late, so they walked to the market, got their groceries, and returned home. Just when they were about to put away the milk, eggs, and butter, they noticed the refrigerator was gone. You see, John Standard, a black man, invented the refrigerator, so they put the food on the counter. By this time, they noticed it was getting mighty cold. Theo went to turn up the heat, and what do you know? Ada Parker, a black female, invented the heating furnace. Even in the summertime, they could not have been out of luck because Frederick Jones, a black man, invented the air conditioner. It was almost time for Theo's father to arrive home. He usually took the bus, but there was no bus because its precursor was the electric trolley, invented by another black man, Albert T. Robinson. He usually took the elevator from his office on to the 20th floor, but there was no elevator because Alex Miles, a black man, invented the elevator. He usually dropped off the office mail at a nearby mailbox, but it was no longer there because Philip Downing, a black man, invented the letter drop mailbox. And William Berry invented the postmarking and canceling machine. Theo sat at the table with his head in his hands. When his father arrived, he asked him, "Why are you sitting in the dark?" Why? Why? Because Lewis Howard Lakemer a black man invented the filament within the light bulb. Theo quickly learned what it would be like if there were no black people in the world. Not to mention if you were ever sick and needed blood, Charles Drew, a black scientist, found a way to preserve and store blood, which led to the starting of the world's first blood bank. And what if a family member had to have surgery? This would have not been possible without Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, a black doctor who performed the first open heart surgery. So, if you're ever wondering, like Theo, where would we be without black people? Well, it's pretty plain to see we could very well still be in the dark. So, I just thought that was a wonderful story. I shared that with my students when I was teaching. And, moving to like tomorrow, I remember as a kid, the lady prophesied over me when I was at church, attending Wayland Chapel, and she said you would be a leader of the children. And, and I look at some of the accomplishments I made, as being the king, the queen and king of the class, first black cheerleader at Princeton High School, the first black female in Evansville Vanderbilt School Corporation, as well as now currently the president. All those things in my life are training me to be where I am now. And so, I've say for tomorrow, for the time period for the future, that Black history will require that the same fiery zeal and the boldness and courage to preserve our legacy and memories past, present, and future of our black heritage at a time so clouded by controversy. Will we have the strength and the power to stand? The ultimate measure of a man is where he stands in a moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. Dr. Martin Luther King. And, as in closing here, I just, the most memorable moment I had that I cherish is attending the 40th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And I remember walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and you could just feel the spirit of those that fought. And I visualized, dogs and the police and so on waiting on the other side of the bridge, and listening to those, the freedom riders and the survivors of, and the most profound statement that they said is that, and I mean, they were teenagers then, so 40, you're talking about 40 years later, they're in their, 50s and so on, but they said if they had to do it all over again, they would. And that was just, profound to me, because that is a courage unbelievable when, you're trying to desegregate a pool and glasses in the bottom of it, and, those events, those things that just, would I do it? Would I, fight that fight? But again, in the time of controversy, as Dr. King said, is where we take our stand and not be comfortable and not be convenient, but we take our stand for the challenge of controversy. So I thank you all for hearing me in my moments of Lyles Station and growing up here, and just a beautiful time. So thank you very much.
All right, now, that was great. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it always is inspiring for me when I hear things of what people have been through. I was sharing with someone not too long ago, matter of fact yesterday, and they said, well, how old are you? When I told them I was around during the time of King, during the time of Malcolm X and all that, and when I told them how old I was, they were surprised. And so we as the youth and things that are coming up, we need to understand and value and understand that a lot of things that we thought was so long ago in history, there's proof of the individuals who were here, who were there during that time. So it's not that long ago. And so with that, I'd just like to take a brief second to, one, thank our sponsors and thank those who have helped out. Here we have Xavier Stewart back there who's volunteered to take pictures for us. I want to appreciate what he's done. Through our efforts up here, the Wigs had sponsored us with the hot dogs and stuff for the 4-H program. We've had Rule King, who donated popcorn and stuff for us. The cake that we have today was donated by Walmart. And for Legacy Taste of the Garden, Lyles Station's own, for providing some of the other things that we have. And so I just wanted to thank our sponsors. Right now we're getting ready for our panelists. So if my panelists would please get ready, and I will call you up here and introduce them to you, and I'll let them introduce themselves. LaVonna Armstrong. She is our panelist today. We're going to hear from the youth of today. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good.
All right.
I'm LaVonna Armstrong. I am born and raised here in Gibson County, and my grandmother actually was born and raised here in Lyles Station, just over the tracks there. So I'm really excited to be here today. By trade, I'm an administrative professional with Youth and Health Systems in Evansville. But my true passion is helping people with health and fitness and getting their lives together on that aspect, so that they can provide and be around their families at the same time. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is a young man I've just learned about today. His name is Jayson Jamerson. How you doing? All right.
Jayson Jamerson, I'm a local business owner here in Princeton, Indiana. A lot of my mom's side of the family grew up here in Lyles Station, and also have a passion for helping the youth and just help building the community. So,
Thank you, Jason. All right, next we have Alex Burton. I met Alex a couple of months ago on a few projects we've been talking about. How are you doing today, Alex? All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Burton. I work for the Evansville School Corporation, program manager for Opt-in. I am currently running for 4th Ward City Council in Evansville. I do a lot of things in the community and try to make it better than it has been in the past.
All right. All right. Now we have, you know, it's always somebody important when they got a hyphen in their name. Rhea Jones Price. How are you doing today, Rhea?
I'm good.
All right.
I'm an attorney, Rhea Jones Price. I'm an attorney. I actually practice up in Vincennes, Indiana. However, I live in Evansville, so I pretty much run the circuit all the way from Evansville up to Terre Haute and all the way around. So that's my day job. I guess by night I'm literally everything else. I play the piano, so I play concerts every now and then, and that's it. So, yeah.
I have marked you down. Just skills. All right, we got a gentleman right now by the name of Courtney L. Johnson. All right, Courtney, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Glad to have you here today.
Glad to be here. As you said, my name is Courtney Johnson. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. Started a nonprofit about 6 years ago, and it's been a blessing. We have a mentoring program, a reading program, and we have annual events and a lot of things that we do in the community. So I'm very passionate about helping others, helping our youth, and just giving back. So thank you for having me.
I didn't bring my glasses today, so somebody have to excuse me for not doing the things I should have done the way I should have done. But let me introduce one of Princeton's own, Nick Burns. I knew Nick when he was little, kind of bigger than me.
Well, my name is Nick Burns. I'm on with Paris. All my family is one that had this school. We were playing around before it was even made, playing around with pianos and everything around here. I own a business here called New Image. It's a gym, so like we like to help people with fitness and stuff. Work for a pipeline company called Celebrtion, and I also own a nonprofit called Hope. We help kids in Gibson County play sports and get cleats and everything else, and entry fees to play sports around local in Gibson County.
And then, wait,
Yeah,
you're all
you didn't make history a couple weeks ago, last week, wasn't it?
Yes, last week. So right now I'm currently running for city councilman at large as well. So,
All right. And now for another gentleman that I just met not too long ago. One I'm proud of to introduce, Mr. DeAnthony Jamerson.
How everybody doing today? I'm DeAnthony Jamerson. I'm a local entrepreneur. I also work here at Lyles Station. We do field trips. We just opened up a 4-H chapter to start here in Lyles Station. I also part of a business, Legacy Taste of the Garden, where we grow fresh produce and we go all over the state of Indiana and sell our produce. And basically, the reason why we kind of started that business there was to, combat the issues with food deserts in our communities around the state. So that's a little bit about me there.
All right, thank you. Here is what's going to be the voices of the youth here. Our moderator is going to be Miss Karen Ragland. I'm going to have her to ask a question, and then we can pass the mic down to whoever decides that they're ready to answer those questions. I can put you in chair right there. Or you got to just go back there.
Good evening again. I think there's 6 questions, and they're kind of combination questions. So I think we'll start on the end and ladies go first. Since we're on the
I can take that wall.
Okay. Being the gentlemen they are, we're going to start with the
That's
ladies
just fine.
first.
Throw it at us.
First question is, why is African American / Black history important to you, to community, to future generations? And part 2 to that is, what legacy contributions are you wanting to leave? So, divide it up.
Sure.
Okay.
I think, number one, first off, us as a generation, we have it made, man. We have had some poor founders ahead of us just dredging through here. I don't think that there's anybody set up better than us at this point. So it's our responsibility to step it up to the next notch and do the same for those coming behind us. And I mean, it's just a blessing. We have so many opportunities. We have all this wonderful history, and we would all like a copy of that story. I've never heard that before. But that's just an example and a testament to how much has been done before us, and how we cannot drop the ball. We just can't.
And you can pass it to
Yeah,
whoever wants to
whoever
answer.
wants to
So whoever, it doesn't, I mean, you want to pass it down to the next one?
I believe Black history is important for us just because as a youth it's important to know where you come from, and so that way you can at least know where you're going or where you can go, the possibilities of what people in front of you have went through to be able to make opportunities, like she said, for you to be able to chase your dreams or to make the path a lot more broader for the next generation coming up. So that's what I believe. Black history is important.
Me, wow, all of that made my mind race. But I always think back to one of my favorite quotes by Zora Hurston, who says, "The present is an egg laid by the past with the future in its shell." We're in a position that we have literally grown up seeing somebody do everything that there's no ceilings that we haven't broken as a race, as a people. even for me, you know, I never would have thought I would have saw a black man in the White House. I just thought it was one of those things that was so far-fetched. But here we are, and now that the discussions and, you know, discussions that we're having about the things and the inequalities that we face, you know, in our communities especially, we're bringing light to that. And, you know, we're not, and, you know, as a quote that, you know, a lot of millennials say, we're not our ancestors from the standpoint, we're not going like, we're here for so much. We're here because of so much that's happened. We're here because of those things, and we're not going to let those things go by the wayside. Keep them at the forefront and do it all. Just take it to the next level.
For me, Black history is history. I mean, it's just that. It's not the fact that, you know, Black people did it. We created this. I mean, so when we put a label on Black history, I like the fact that we put a label on it, but I also like to, you know, say it's even wider than just Black history. And that's why it's so important to our community, because a lot of times our community doesn't look at Black accomplishments or contributions as important. And when you devalue that accomplishment or those contributions, then you actually devalue America, to me. And so that's why it's important. And the legacy I would like to leave is, well, I like to deal with people, and so younger, particularly younger people, and you know, to the extent that I can extend some kind of knowledge that I gained from people that have come before me to younger people. I really think that's the legacy that we leave is, you know, pass on what we know and what we've gained and try to make things a little bit easier for the generations after us.
Everybody said a lot of things that I was planning on saying before the mic got to me, but Black history is very important. And that's one of the things that I want to push, not only for my kids, but for our communities and for other people as well, because I think now a lot of that is not being passed down to our younger generation, the younger generation. I mentor 11 kids, and we have kids that we mentor in our program, and a lot of the stuff that I was taught, they're not, and they don't know a lot of the things that she shared with us as far as what African Americans have done and what they created. So I think it's important for us to continue that and then pass it on to the youth so they can continue, and then so on and so on. So it's very important to know where you came from, as the young man said, but also as far as the legacy, I'm a people person and I love to give back. I want people to remember the things that we've done and the impact that we've had through our nonprofit, not only in Evansville, that's just the starting point, but we want to continue to do things not only for people in our city, but to branch off and give back and inspire, Black, white, it doesn't matter, but inspire as many people as we can to give back and do what you can in your community.
Well, I think we can go to the next question now. Pretty much, I mean, what Black history means to me is just knowing what has happened in our past. You know, like I said, everything hasn't been so easy, you know, like I said, with the technology and everything else. I mean, I've experienced it as well, playing sports in this area and everything else. But just showing that we can overcome all of that as well. For our community, one thing is where I grew up here in Princeton, one thing I like why I started my nonprofit called Hope, someone showed, not just Black, like I said, not just Black kids, all families, you know, that we all can do it, not just because we're from Princeton or wherever. You know, a small town, we all can make something of ourselves as well. And then I like to help the family, give back and help out. You know, Christmas, we really try to help out families as well that are in need, you know, and not just sports attire and everything else. We like to help them out as well. For a legacy, well, my story from the last couple of weeks is, you know, one thing I want to show my I got 2 nieces, I have no kids, but, and also local, my family as well, a lot of these in here are my family. I want to show that, you know, if you want something, you know, you got to fight for it, and no matter what's in your way, you know, is on to show that we can, if you fight for it, you know, the man above will let you, you know, will push you through, and trust me, he will, so.
Yeah, like they said, it's a little rough being on the end. What Black History means, why it's important to me, I just honestly believe, like, with the day and age that we live in, the society we live in, our history has been so diluted to where it is important because it's a sense of empowerment, not only just to the youth, but to us as a people in general, to find out these new facts of information that we created or that we went and did, these accomplishments. Like I said, it's just a sense of empowerment to me, like I said, and it should be to us as a people. That's why I think it's important. On the legacy standpoint of it, the legacy that I would like to leave behind is just really my impact in my community, like really trying to recreate and help rebuild our community as a whole. And not just the African American community, but like I said, the community that I live in as a whole. So that's pretty much it.
Next question. Growing up, who were the influential African Americans to inspire you? Now, and what inspires you every day to go out to make a difference? Start here again, or?
He's like,
Do that.
So, I mean, just for me, being able to see Barack Obama, you know, be the first black president, I would say he'd probably be all of ours. You know, most influential African-American person in my time. But just one personally would be my grandfather. He was honored by African-American Smithsonian. He's an entrepreneur himself, and a lot of the things that he lives by, his lifestyle, it touched me and it kind of helped mold me into the person that I am today as well. So that's pretty much it on that. What was the second part of the question?
What inspires you?
Oh, so what inspires me every day is really just being the change that I want to see. We talk about, you know, problems that we see in our communities or just in society itself. If I want to see that change, I know I got to be that change. So that motivates me to go out and, you know, work towards that change. So.
All right. Who inspired you? Like I said, my cousin said, his grandpa, which is my uncle, my great uncle. Like I said, I worked with him. I worked with his brothers and stuff growing up on the farm, working around Lyles Station, picking watermelons and cantaloupes and everything. Working at the stand used to be over by Walmart, and just just hearing everybody come and talk. You know, when they would come and buy produce from us. Just hearing everybody talk highly of my family and everything else. So that was very influential to me. And then what inspired me is basically my family. My family is like, you know, just little things. They tell me they're proud of me just for what I do. Like I said, and seeing the impact of, you know, like when I fought for what was right last week, you know, my nieces tell me good luck. And then them understanding now what was going on, you know, and then, like I said, my family is my biggest inspiration for me.
I would say growing up, I have a lot of people that have been influential in my life, but I would say my grandfather and my dad, because without them, I wouldn't be the man I am today. Just watching them and seeing everything that they've done, from working hard to yes ma'am, no sir, opening doors, doing the little things that I watched, taught me just how to be a man and just helped me to be the man I am today. So I would have to say my grandfather and my dad. But Muhammad Ali is I know I wanted to do somebody that was famous as well. And then my parents, well, not my parents, my dad and my grandfather, but Muhammad Ali had a huge impact on me growing up, not for what he did in the ring, but what he did outside of the ring, and just the impact that he had on not just African Americans, but everybody. And that's a legacy that I never say try, that I'm going to leave as well, because I really believe that I'm going to have a huge impact and leave a legacy behind as well. But I would say what inspires me today is my faith and my parents. I'm big on my faith, first of all, and I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing today if it wasn't for God, because I do believe I'm living in my purpose. The stuff that I'm doing as far as helping people and giving back, this wasn't something I thought I would be doing. When I graduated, I wanted to go off and do other things, but of course, God's plan is better than yours, so you gotta go with it sometimes, even if you don't want to. But I would say just being able to have an impact and seeing past 6 years, not only what I've been able to do, but our nonprofit, the kids we've been able to have an impact on, and seeing some of these kids about to graduate and go off to college, and knowing that we were a part of that is huge. So that's what inspires me every day to get up. And I love what I do. I'm happy to wake up and be able to be a blessing to somebody else.
Growing up, I had, obviously my parents were like my biggest role models. I thought the sun rose and set on them. My mother was from the Caribbean. She's Haitian, and she came here young. Her parents were born on the island, and they moved here, and she was she grew up in America, in Chicago, but that's where they were going because they were seeking, opportunity, and they were relatively, obviously kind of poor, and my mother grew up with her and, 2 sisters, and at that point it was more about assimilation, so we didn't want to be different. So the idea was to change, be more American. And she ended up, she went from living on a little house on the south side, of her apartment, to being graduating 3 times from the University of Illinois, and she became a psychologist. So, and that's my mother. My dad, my dad always says he married up, but he was also very, very prominent in his hometown in Dayton, Ohio, where I'm from. And he and his father was a gardener, and everybody, knew him. He was the person that if he needed a remedy, he had in his garden somewhere. My dad grew up with that. My dad became a school teacher, taught, for years and years. So those are the 2 biggest influences on me. What inspired me? Okay. Inspiration. I gain inspiration from a lot of places, but mostly from other people, and from doing things for other people. When people tell me, I work in a place. I'm not exactly the most profitable lawyer at all. I don't necessarily charge a lot. Because most of my practice is with low-income people. So, but the reason I do that, I'm okay with that, is because a lot of the times, gratefulness is something that I really, that kind of drives me. And so when people, when I help somebody solve a problem that normally they probably wouldn't have had a lawyer for because they can't afford one, that really drives me.
For me, my biggest influence is my family, both my mom's side and my dad. Both, hardworking, educated people that just go out and make a difference. Look out for way more than just our individual family. Obviously, we do all we can for our family, but the reach and scope, goes from DC to California. We're somewhere in between. My grandmother was one of 12, and she's the youngest, and just that whole piece of spending a whole lot of time with her, especially in my younger years, of just developing that hard work and just that work ethic that's has stuck with me. That's probably been my biggest inspiration, is family. And then what inspires me to go every day now is probably just the present examples that I really look up to. I know President Obama was mentioned, but even beyond him, I don't know why and how, but I took a liking to Adam Clayton Powell. I was doing my grad work at Western Kentucky, and his whole philosophy and being the most powerful African American in the House just really stuck with me. And then to go to DC and really get the inner workings and see how everything actually worked, it really struck a chord with me. And then, you know, in 2012, that summer or 2013, I was graduating from school, and I was looking to go back out to DC in the office that I worked in, and the chief of staff, who I'm still in contact with today, he reached out to me and said, Alex, he said, I would love to hire you, but I would be doing you a disservice. Go back home, you'll be way more effective. And for him to tell me that, I was like, that was the worst thing he could have ever told me. Because here I am trying to, you know, work in this congressional office, and you're going to tell me to go back home. And I hated him. I did not like him for a while. But now, you know, on Facebook, he'll message me every so often. He said, see, I told you I was right. You need to be back home. So that's been a big influence, and, you know, just everything that I'm doing, and, you know, working with Courtney in Evansville, and just really making a difference. We saw a gap, we did it, we're doing it. That's been the biggest blessing. It just keeps us going, because now, you know, though, you know, we may not be in the school every day, if we go so long without being in the school, the kids are coming up to us saying, hey, where y'all been at? We ain't seen you. So that lets us know that they're paying attention to what it is we're doing, and that they know we believe in them. So.
I'd say I agree with him a little bit as far as my influential coming up is from my family on both sides. My mom's side and my dad's side, they both did an excellent job in making sure that we understood what hard work was, what respect was, what our history was, and as far as that we could be whatever we wanted to be or what we put our minds to be. So that was definitely a big thing for me growing up. Like I never knew exactly what I wanted to be, but I always knew I wanted to create a change and be great and to be a part of something big. So that was definitely huge for me. I remember my grandma always telling me things like after ball games and stuff that would definitely, it didn't sound the greatest at the time. She'd tell me, you gotta lose some, you gotta win some, baby, but you know, you just gotta fight to see another day. So that stuff like that, it played a big role in things as far as that didn't necessarily take place on a basketball court or a football field or something like that. That stuff definitely helped me. And my grandfather as well, I don't think there's anything he couldn't do. So he always told me, like, if I was struggling with something, to make sure that just keep working at it, you can get it done, you put your mind to it. So that was definitely something that helped me persevere through a lot of things and struggles that I went through in my life. So that was definitely a big influence for me. And then something that, or what keeps me going every day and that keeps me inspired, I would have to say, is just to know that I'm creating some type of impact and some type of change in a way for the generation coming up next to me or behind me and the generations after that. So that's just something that keeps me going even in the days I don't feel like going. So that's what keeps me going.
Mine's the same as the majority of everyone here. I think as far as most influential as a whole would definitely be your family members. You're with them day in and day out. Hi, girl. But I spent my summers in Lyles Station and grew up on a farm. And you really learn like some hardcore work ethic. We're living on a farm. When we do staffing at work, I always say, who are the farm kids? Give me the farm kids. I mean, you know, you come home, you change clothes, you do your work. And Nick is guilty of this too. We have a great attendance. Yeah, we're accountable and reliable people, and I really attribute that to having been raised that way. As far as the inspiration and what keeps me going is the people that are watching me, my niece, my nephews, my daughter, Nick's little girls, his nephew or his nieces. It's just like, you know, you have his eyes on you, and it's your responsibility to not be afraid to try. You might miss it, but you gotta give it a go. And just like Nick did last week, like don't just, you know, play nice. You don't have to play nice all the time. So just be a go-getter and show up and be prepared.
Next question is, how do you prevail in the face of racism? How do you prevail in the face of racism?
Yeah, and I'll do this short. Mine, I think, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I grew up in a biracial family, so for me, anytime I didn't get anything, it wasn't because I was being, it wasn't racially motivated. I didn't really know. It took me a while. It took me being in a professional environment to kind of feel that even. But I always give the benefit of the doubt where I can maybe point out in a, here we go, play nice. Point out in a fashion that maybe you could have approached it differently, or a lot of times I will ignore it. I will not give it the power to change my mind. I will be over-prepared at times. I think we can probably relate to that. Arrive, show up on time, you're there, you're going to give it a go. And make that be the last thing they notice about you. And one of my favorite things is to show up someplace where I've interacted with somebody, maybe through emails and phone conversations, and they have not seen me, and I show up and I am not what they were expecting, and that is priceless. So that happens often. Yeah. Anyway, but I think that I give them the benefit of the doubt and I point out, well, actually correct them, because oftentimes they're wrong with their stereotypical, issues. But I think that a lot of times they don't realize they're doing it because it's just so commonplace in our area that it's just, a lot of times it's not necessarily intentional. Sometimes it's lack of intellect. So.
What helps me prevent the racism is, to be honest with you, since I was young, I always knew that I was gonna have to work at least twice as hard as somebody that was obviously racist to me, just because the opportunities was just always, the odds was different. So, to be honest with you, I see it, but I really just block it out. It's all mental. Just because they tell me no, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna be able to do whatever I put my mind to or whatever is set for me. So, what's my calling is I'm gonna be able to take it like it. But yeah, what's for me is for me, basically. So.
Me, basically that answer is, I don't even worry about it. I experience it. I'm not gonna get caught up on it because people are gonna think how they're gonna think. I'm not out to set. I'm so focused in on what I got going on. People want me to act that way. So be it. Growing up playing sports, getting called the N-word, that kind of stuff. It happened. At that point, it was just like it happened. The first time it happened, you're like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. But over time, you get used to it. I use that, let there be motivation to keep going and go further and do more. So.
My answer is, I don't know. I don't know how to prevail. I can't say, before I got here, I was relatively sheltered. So, my mother would fight my battles for me. And I would be the one telling her, I was like, it's not racism, Mom. That's my mom, of course. She's on top of it. So she knew, but I didn't. And so I moved here, to Evansville, but I'm working in since. And the one time that I really felt it, I was like, oh, this is something here. I'm contracted with the public defender, so I do, instead of having a public defender office in Vincennes, all the local attorneys contract with the public defender, and so we were appointed to represent people who can't afford representation. And they switched the program in 2016, something like that, maybe 2017, one of those years. And they switched it from a billing system where I would log my hours and I would bill for the hour. But they switched it to a flat rate, salary. And everybody else, I was put on misdemeanors, and about 5 other attorneys. And all the other 5 attorneys got $30,000 on their contract, and I only got $10,000. And so when the guy told me, I was, it took me a while, and then I went back to my, so I was like, maybe it's something different, So I went back to my employer and I said, hey, so everybody else is getting $30,000 and I'm only getting $10,000. So I was like, maybe he sees, if he sees it, because he's white, if he sees it, then it's gotta be something. So he's like, oh, and he, of course he's he thinks he's ready to go all out now. And the good thing is he's really conservative. So I was like, if he sees it, there's something there, because I don't want to go off and then I don't have family here. So if I go to jail, it's it. Like, that's it. So I'm like, if I go off and, there's going to be like, Vincent's first black lawyer in jail. I can't have that. So luckily, I had other people willing to fight for me as well. So as long as I said get allies as well and try to include other people, because if you can tell somebody and you can tell us, you can tell a story in a way that it makes sense to you, to see why it's probably problematic, and then you get allies, they can actually help you and bolster you up and change, those kind of positions.
Well, did you get your 30?
I did get my 30. I got 35.
I would say just being exposed to racism at a young age helped with the things that I deal with today. Like Alex said, we grew up together. Alex and I best friends, so it's what, six years old? I've been knowing Alex for a really long time, and we've dealt with it together, not just playing sports, but driving down the street and getting pulled over once a week, and a police officer, Alex is driving, police officer asking me all the questions was, even though Alex was black, but he was asking me 1,000,001 questions. I had earrings in my ear and I had a chain on, so he asked me. I guess I was the threat, but just different things that I dealt with as a kid prepared me for what some of the things I deal with now, being the only black person in a meeting full of 20, 30 people, and sitting in board meetings and different things, and just hearing people, some of the things that they say, a lot of it is ignorance, and I can't take that to heart because, again, they don't know. A lot of people just don't know, and I can't get mad at everybody for being ignorant, but there has been times where I've dealt with some stuff and I wanted to react, but I knew, as she said, there's people that are watching, and I don't want to set that example that if somebody calls you the N-word, or if somebody does something that you don't like that is racist, you just gotta ignore it and just continue to do what you do and use it as motivation. And that's what I've done as far as not only starting a nonprofit, but doing some of the things that I do and doing the work that I do. You are gonna come across some racist comments and some racist people, but just use it as motivation. I think everybody up here has done that, or we wouldn't be where we are today. So,
I would say it was rebel over racism. I mean, growing up in a small town, small community, I mean, like my mom and dad basically prepared me for that. My dad came from Chicago. He moved to Vincennes in the 70s. So he said the culture shock, and everything else. But he told me how, my dad, both my mom and dad both are college grads. They rise above all that. My grandma was one. My mom's mom was she's the first African-American nurse out here in general. So I think biggest thing is, and it's summing it all up, is, basically I've just been taught to kind of rise above it. I've been the only black kid playing baseball, my whole life, working for an oil company. When we go speak to contractors, there'll be 50 people in there, and I'll be the only African-American in there, and I'm the only African-American at my company in this area. So I kind of take pride in that as well, and be observant, things that happen in our generation right now, certain things that, you pay attention to. Is when I lived in Evansville, not bringing too much up, but like the whole Trayvon Martin deal, I live on the east side, and I get up and I work a swing shift, so I work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so I would go run in the morning at like 3 o'clock in the morning before I go to work. So I live over by Robert Stadium, so I run to Robert Stadium, run back. Well, it made me more aware of things. I was like, well, maybe I should not wear this. Don't wear this or wear that, be a little more, because, like I said, just growing up, you're aware of certain things that happen, and like I said, a lot of it's ignorance, and then also, how do we prevail as well? I try to talk to like our local police stations as well. I grew up with the police chief. We played football and sports all together. So we try to come up with, try and get involved with the youth as well. You know, let's try to, you know, start doing programs, you know, to show our youth, you know, and like I said, I think the biggest thing is just rise above.
Yeah, I'm pretty much everybody said what needed to be said, but I'm in agreement with them. Success is pretty much the best revenge. I grew up in Indianapolis. I moved down here when I was like 11, so I really got a culture shock from going to like, you know, a predominantly black school, you know, growing up with black teachers and, you know, all my classmates being black, then they're coming down here and everybody in the class is black. I'm probably like the only one in my class that was black. Everybody else was, you know, the other race. And the main thing that I feel as though I was taught was to never feel inferior to them, you know, or to never give them the upper hand, or to never look at them like they're better than you. You know, always have pride in yourself and to always stand up against, you know, racism, or when somebody's getting treated unfairly or unequally, always stand in and stand up against, you know, wrongdoing. That's pretty much.
We're gonna do a little switch. We got time for one more question, so for you guys that was ready for the next question that's gonna be, we're gonna leave it up to our moderator to decide which question she's gonna ask. Throw a little spin in it. Moderator's choice.
What is missing in today's society that is not allowing us to come together as a community and support the efforts of those striving to make a difference? So, what is missing in today's society that is not allowing us to come together as a community and support the efforts of those striving to make a difference?
We'll start on that.
No, we
Start
got
in the middle.
We'll start in the middle. I got to start.
You gotta decide which way
Yeah, what's missing, I'd say a comprehensive agenda specifically for the black community. And I say that because there's so many issues from birth to death that have to be addressed, and I don't think anyone's really attempted to at least write them all down, write all the issues down, right? You could say it's, you know, pre-K education, but what about, you know, birth from, you know, womb to 3 years old? What's, you know, what can we do to better help families from that standpoint? And then, you know, so then on the other end of the spectrum, you know, as we look at, you know, the older generations, what can be captured or what needs to be captured to make their life better? You know, you hear political candidates talk about Medicare for all. Well, what does that really look like? How does that impact our community specifically? And, you know, going from there and then really just passing the baton from generational wealth, right? So we're kind of in this, we grew up in this this phase of, you know, 401ks, that sort of thing, but how are we going to leave our legacy, but how are we going to tap into the legacy that's of our grandparents and great-grandparents, that sort of thing, to really make all our efforts going in the same direction. Because I think right now, you know, 1 minute it's police brutality, the next minute it's, you know, sexual abuse. I'm just throwing that out there, but it's never been anything consistent for any period of time. I was looking at something yesterday. I was looking at something yesterday. It was the Rainbow Push economic conference, that summit that they were doing on Wall Street. They were talking about just how how industry's really going and how, in California, the tech, what's it called? The Silicon Valley, how they're starting one in Harlem, specifically for businesses of color, and to really make sure that we're tapped into the Silicon Valley movement and making sure that tech is our friend and we're getting into the industry before it moves so fast that our communities really aren't getting any attention or really pushing the bar, making sure our kids are exposed to it. So long story short, comprehensive agenda for African American community.
I think what's missing is unity. I think part of our problem is that we don't support ourselves like the community support themselves. And so when we see somebody, a lot of times we try to tear each other down even. I mean, we actively try to tear each other down. We don't support black businesses. We don't support, you know, black intelligence and black excellence. And the way we fix that is to literally do that. I mean, just support, you know, because they call, I think they called it, you know, crabs in the barrel or whatever. And when we all fail if, you know, we keep doing that. We never get out of the barrel on that point. So that's my take on it.
I'm glad she mentioned that. I was gonna say unity too. So growing up, I have a very big family. My grandmother just turned 84 Tuesday. So hearing the stories, how they grew up, and the unity in the churches and everybody coming together, and to see what we're dealing with now is totally different. And I read a lot, and I've seen movies and a lot of different things where you just see how black people came together. And those times were way worse than what we have today. So just to see churches come together, Alex said putting an agenda, a plan together, that's something that's very important, because I feel like we both do a lot for our community, but trying to push this agenda to some of the older folks, they don't really see the need as we do. Like you said, in the schools, we're in the schools every day, so I can tell you what these kids need because they tell me. I don't just say, well, they need this. I ask them first. And that's one of the things that's so needed. Just seeing churches come together again would be amazing, because I know that's, not to say Evansville, I don't know how it is here, but there's a lot of churches doing a lot of great things, but only for their congregation. And if it was more the whole community, you will see a drastic change. So I think just what she said, unity is the #1 thing, because you can tell it's not a lot of that these days, and us just supporting each other is rare. And I wish we could all just come together, and that's something that all of us are up here trying to do. And hopefully we'll pass the torch to a lot of the younger ones, and they'll continue to do it as well.
I agree with Courtney and everybody else as well. I think the biggest thing is unity and knowledge. You know, that's the biggest thing I think is, you know, and support. Well, unity and support go together. Basically, is you know, as being an African American business owner here in this community, I mean, I support everybody, but the biggest thing I see that we need to do is support each other, and then when we do things, you know, we all stand up together, you know, and then, you know, knowledge of everything, understanding things as well, and then, I said probably the main thing,
I would probably say, like everybody else said, like support and mainly love for one another. I mean, I feel as though us as a race, we've got so much conflict in between each other, and we don't come together enough. Like, I just simply feel as though if we just showed more love to one another, I mean, that would kind of get us in the start to even support each other, or, you know what I'm saying, care enough about one another to even create this community once again. Because if you look back, you know, prior to civil rights and around those times, even with Black Wall Streets or Lyles stations, the community all came together as one, and they all worked together as one, and they, you know, thought about each other when they went to do something. Like when Joshua Lyles donated the 6 acres of land here, he wasn't just thinking about, you know, himself or what he could get out of the airline railroad. He was thinking about what he could bring to this community and how it could benefit everybody in this community. So that would probably be what I would say.
Not to piggyback, but yeah, unity, love, support, and I think the family unit, we need to get back to that as well, because we don't have a lot of these kids, and is missing discipline and stuff like that, and that comes from just being in a family unit to help bring us together to get us to where we need to go. So, yeah, just support unity.
Mine's like a little completely, totally different. I think that as a community, we really struggle with sharing our stressors or our areas that we're lacking. I think that we always feel like